Hello, welcome to the Enchanted Circle Podcast, and welcome to our 4th episode. We are a new podcast of 3 best friends that have known each other since high school that love fantasy books. Here we are doing what we love most, which is obviously reading, theorizing, and having a great time together. From meeting in high school to reading Harry Potter, Twilight, and Mortal Instruments series to reading Fourth Wing and ACOTAR, we are all back to rereading Fourth Wing to prepare for the upcoming release of Onyx Storm. So we created this podcast for the recap and to theorize together. I'm Carolina. Welcome to episode 4. We are covering chapters 15 through 20, including Xaden's POV. So note for chapter 16, we will be doing Violet's POV first, then Xaden's POV. Thank you so much for coming back, and I hope you enjoy our podcast and have fun.
I'm Bella. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a super busy week at work for me, but I am finally on my much-needed staycation to reboot myself because I have been glitching everywhere and every day lately, and these ladies already know. But reading Fourth Wing has definitely been a part of my restoration routine, so it has helped me a lot during this time.
Bella, we love you no matter what, okay? You bring spice.
Bella, you're the best. Don't even
You
stop it.
are
We
the
love
sprinkles on top, let me just say.
Oh, thank you guys.
I'm a Steph. What a couple of weeks it has been. Getting our podcast up and going and learning all that it entails has been an interesting experience. Literally still cannot believe that I get to come on here and talk about all the thoughts and feelings about Xaden and Fourth Wing. Whether we have 1 or 10 or maybe one day thousands of listeners, I want to always let you know how grateful I am that you took the time out of your day to spend it with us. Now, let's get into it, ladies.
We just have to mention content warnings. There will be spoilers for the entire book of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, including all of Xaden's POV chapters. If you have not read any of these books and his new POVs, please come back once you do. We wouldn't want to spoil anything for you. We may mention interviews or posts from Rebecca Yarros, so spoilers with that also. Fair warning, we will be quoting quite a bit of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros for this recap. This podcast is rated R due to the topics we discuss about this adult book. We tend to possibly curse a lot, so please be aware of children listening. Let's get into it. Chapter 15. The description above chapter 15 is, quote, "Just because you survive threshing doesn't mean you'll survive the ride to the flight field. Being chosen isn't the only test, and if you can't hold your seat, then you'll fly straight into the ground." End quote. Page 50 of the Book of Brennan. This chapter definitely demonstrates how accurate that statement is. Violet is currently falling to the ground after falling off Taryn, and luckily he catches her. The banter between these two during this time had me on the floor. The chapter starts off by Taryn saying, quote, "You're making us look bad. Stop it." End quote. I was hollering the second time around. Violet is like, what the fuck, dude? I'm trying my best here, okay?
When he says, quote, "Now get in the seat and actually hold on this time or no one is going to believe that I've actually chosen you," I was dying.
It's so sassy. It's so sassy.
I know, right?
I love it. I love it.
Violet tells Taryn that it's hard to stay on while he's doing acrobatics, and he says, quote, "Simple flight is hardly acrobatics," end quote. You'll see me quote Taryn quite a bit because it's so hilarious. I love our grumpy old man Taryn. Violet at this point is still in awe, like she can't believe Taryn chose her, but I can believe it because for Violet to stand up for Andarna and fight 3 cadets is heroic, and she is our heroine.
You know, she just had Dane in her head way too much. Girl needs to up her confidence because she is that girl.
Terrence swings her up on his back again and holds her in her seat with his powers. He tells her to hold on into the seat, and what the fuck, he can't even feel her legs back there. Violet is like, dude, I did my best. What the fuck? And she's screaming at him. And he's like, Violet, relax. You don't need to scream. I can hear you just fine. This banter was amazing. A line that stood out to me was when Violet tells him she's not as strong as other riders. Taryn replies, quote, I know exactly who and what you are, Violet Soaringale, end quote. There is a deeper meaning here. What could Violet be, as he mentioned?
I definitely think there's a deeper meaning here. Remember a little bit. The elders were talking about Violet before Andarno hatched. Andarno heard them talking about Violet. Something about Violet is just elite.
Also, that infamous line that you mentioned, Carol, where Taryn says, quote, "I know exactly who and what you are, Violet Sorrengail." The fact that he says, "What?" like literally gave me goosebumps.
Taryn tells her that they need to put on a show, so he holds her in the seat with his magic and does a few tricks before they land to the flight field. Then Violet asks him before they land, why did he choose her? Taryn basically tells her that it's because she saved Andarna. At first I thought Andarna was Taryn's baby, but obviously, we learned that's not the case. I love the relationship between Andara and Taryn, especially Taryn, who compliments Violet, telling her that, quote, "You are the smartest of your year, the most cunning," which is true. I remember in dragon class, for lack of better words, they did say that the black dragon is the most cunning. Very fitting.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Carol, because, you know, they're both so smart and discerning, which makes a lot of sense as to why he chose her.
Exactly. He also says, quote, "You defended the smallest with ferocity, and strength of courage is more important than physical strength, since you apparently need to know before we land," end quote. Violet is taken back by the kind words, and she realizes Taryn read her thoughts. Now she has no privacy at all.
And I love that line about strength and courage is more important than physical strength. It's like, you know, just goes to show that those Biscayeth cadets got it all twisted.
They land on the flight field and everyone is in awe of them. Taryn leans his leg down, then Violet slides down to dismount. She's still in disbelief right now that she's officially a rider. Then she sees Andarna again tucked under Taryn. She says to her, quote, "Maybe you should fly off the next time someone suggests you save yourself, eh?" End quote. Then Andarna answers in her mind, quote, "Maybe I was saving you," end quote. Violet didn't even realize yet that Andarna has chosen her also. She just assumed that she's breaking the rules and communicating with her. Violet notices her mother there, but Melgreen and Panchek are just staring at them, especially Panchek. Violet's mom orders Panchek to not say Taryn's name before Violet. Violet takes this as an insult, like her mom can't believe she actually bonded Taryn. But I think her mom is protecting her and making sure no one else says his name besides Violet in order to secure the bond further.
When I first read this part, I took it as cold as fuck for her mom not to believe that she bonded Taryn. I just feel like, one, she hasn't spoken to her daughter in months. Her daughter has literally accomplished so much, and she gives her zero recognition. Like in that moment, I feel like something in Violet breaks a little bit because she's hoping that her mom is going to be there for her and going to be proud of her. And we don't see her mom have that kind of reaction. Later on, now rereading, I know that has changed. And knowing what I know now about General Sorrengail, I know she was just protecting her baby girl.
As Violet says his name, further banter is happening here. Taryn tells her, quote, "Pronunciation could use some work," end quote. And Violet fires back with the quote, "Hey, at least I remembered," end quote. I love their relationship so much. Then he hits her with the quote, "At least I didn't let you fall to your death," end quote. "Gee, thanks, Taryn." And Darna tells Violet her name, and Violet's like, "Wait, what?" Then when Violet tells the roll caller and Darna's name, then all hell breaks loose.
In this moment, I was like, oh my fucking God. I did not expect that to happen. Little Andarna just announcing herself being bonded to Violet blew my fucking mind. She's just there, Andarnanum, and like, Violet's like, huh? And everybody's like, huh? And I was like, huh?
Yeah. And I was also like, huh? When I was reading this, and I was like, oh my God, our girl has two dragons.
One of the best moments of the book right here.
That was chapter 15. So we're on chapter 16. And I want to mention here that I'll be doing Violet's POV first, then Xaden's POV. Let's start off with Violet's. The description above the chapter says basically that dragons have their own hierarchy and laws. Scene starts by General shouting absolutely not to Violet having two dragons, and chaos is just happening in this moment. While Violet is getting checked out at the medical station, Violet is even in further disbelief that she has now two dragons. Our girl is the baddest be out here, okay? Violet sees Jack getting looked at by the healers as well and noticed he bond an orange scorpion tail. Can we note that it's just usually orange dragons that the, quote, villains are bonded to? Just saying. Jack apparently can't stop staring at Taryn from across the field and hasn't noticed yet that our girl Violet is the one that bonded him. Ha! Loser. He'll find out soon enough. Professor Kaori is helping Violet, and he tells her that within these next couple of months, her main focus will be on strengthening the bond between her and her dragons and riding. He says he could call Nolan to mend her, but Violet tells him no because she notices that all eyes are on her and her dragons right now. She doesn't want to appear weak, which, shout out to our girl, she told those cadets when she was fighting them she's used to fighting through the pain. Big respect for our girl here fighting right now, even though she's in pain. I can't imagine how tough that is for her everyday life.
Again, her mental walls that she builds against the pain are fucking amazing. Like, she is so mentally strong.
Very smart and resilient.
You're a smart girl. Xaden says so too later on in this chapter. Okay. So then the most satisfying scene, Jack charges towards Violet and says, "You," to her. And she's like, "What, ho?" Professor Kaori states, quote, "I wouldn't get any closer to her," end quote. To Jack, Violet antagonizes him further and was like, quote, "I didn't hide out there and I'm not hiding here," end quote. Then Professor Kaori also states, quote, "She doesn't need to hide behind me when she's bonded to the most powerful dragon of your year. Your orange is a good choice, Barlow. Bade, right? He had 4 other riders before you," end quote.
Even Professor Kaori was like, "Sit your little booty down, you little whack-ass, with your little whack-ass orange dragon, with your little whack-ass."
But wait, with your flat-ass booty.
Ass butt, like,
still the weirdest insult I've ever heard. Jack realizes and he's like, "Oh shit, I can't kill her," and probably pissing his pants.
Shortly after this, Jack Ass says, quote, "I don't know what she told you about what happened out there." Professor Kaori says, quote, "Nothing. Is there something I need to know?" I am so annoyed with Violet here because I wish she would have tattletaled, especially to this professor, because he loves dragons.
Professor Kaori tells them to go stand next to their dragons because the senior riders have returned and the dragons seem to be meeting together. Violet then has questions for Kaori if there have been any other rider with 2 dragons and if they would allow her to have 2. Kaori reminds Violet that dragons have their own laws and humans may think they're in control, but it's really up to the dragons. Violet walks back to Taryn and Andarna. She proceeds to tell them that they are causing mayhem by what they did, and the humans aren't going to allow this. And Taryn reminds her it's not up to them, it's up to the, quote, Empyrean, end quote, aka the dragons, which is what Professor Kaori just told her.
Series in its entirety is called the Empyrean series. So I know there's a lot of mystery on what happens in the Veil, but I just feel maybe Violet's going to go to the Veil.
For sure. There has to be a point where she goes there. There's no doubt.
There's more with the elders. There's more with the Veil. There's more to be revealed. I can't wait for Onyx Storm.
We're almost there. Almost there.
Violet was about to ask another question, but then she sees the biggest dragon she's ever seen, aka Coda, who is General Melgreen's dragon, and who's apparently the leader of their den because he's the eldest. She notices a series of growls and noises from Taryn and Coda, and Andarna tells Violet that they are in fact talking about her. Ha! Andarna is so freaking adorable. Taryn tells Violet, quote, "Stay close to the wing leader until we return," end quote. Violet thinks he means squad leader, and he's like, "You heard me, bitch." Taryn already knows the deal. Of course, Violet knows where Xaden is and sees him across the field and notices Xaden is staring at Taryn. I can't help but wonder, is Xaden talking to Taryn in this moment already? As the dragons go have this meeting, all the riders meet with each other to find their fellow cadets and friends. Violet sees Ree immediately. It's such a heartfelt moment when they are reunited. Riddick comes in and snatches her up and spins her around, just so happy that his friend is okay. But I also can't help but wonder if Xaden knows this and if he's jealous. We love a jealous Xaden. Sawyer is there and bonded a dragon. Sadly, Trina did not make it though. And we obviously know about Tynan.
I'm so proud of Sawyer.
So proud of him.
Our sweet Sawyer finally got a dragon.
And we obviously know about Tynan the traitor. The four has made it. I was smiling so hard in this scene, seeing them reunited together. I just love their friendship. Here is who they bonded with. Rhea bonded with the green dagger tail, and she said it was easy, as if it was meant to be, and it was actually one of the dragons that went up to Violet and sniffed her vest that Mira gave her from Teen's scales.
Oh my god, the green dragon for Rhea is so fitting.
I know, right? So cute. Riddick bonded with the brown sword tail. Sawyer bonded with the red sword tail. To ruin the moment, here comes Dane the shit stain, touches her and spins her around and yanks her to his chest. Like, dude, fucking chill, okay? Dane is like, oh my god, you're hurt. Dane is starting his bullshit again, and he tells Violet to come with him. I love how he's about to talk to Violet, and she notices Xaden again. And she even mentions how she's about to turn away from him. So Dane is like, what the fuck happened out there? And is basically telling Violet to choose Andarna and that she has to choose. Violet is like, no. Now she's telling Dane that it's not up to the humans. Dane fucking thinks Violet isn't good enough to have Taryn. Like, dude, Dane the shit stain, go away, bro.
Oh my god, he was so forceful. He was basically commanding her, telling her, you will make a choice and you are going to choose Andarna. Like, excuse me? Dane is lucky that I live in the real world, because if my ass was in this book, I would have punched him so hard he would forget the whole codex.
That was real good.
Bella, you're amazing. I fucking love you. We find out here that Taryn and Sigale are a mated pair. Boom. This is it. We learn that mated pairs can't be separated for long or their health diminishes. So they're always stationed together. Always. Which Violet realizes what's going on.
Dane being super forceful. Obviously, Dane knew Taryn and Sigale were mated. He didn't want Vi to be linked to Xaden. That's why he tells her to choose Andarna. I think it's more jealousy, Avi, with Xaden.
I mean, who wouldn't be?
I mean, have you seen that fan art? Have you seen the fan art out there?
Mm-hmm. She tells Dane everything that happened out there, and Dane starts to accuse Xaden of stepping in. Dane says to Violet, quote, don't you see what happened? What Xaden's done? End quote. Then a shape emerges from the shadows, and Violet hears, quote, please do tell me what it is you think I've done. End quote. It's Zaddy, everyone. It starts to get a little hot over there for Violet. Dane accuses Xaden of manipulating Threshing. Violet is like, Dane, you're insane. She proceeds to tell Dane that if Xaden wants to kill her, he would have a long time ago. What I find interesting here is her inner monologue. She says to herself, quote, he's had every possible opportunity, and yet I'm still standing here, bonded to his dragon's mate, end quote. His is emphasized here, and I wonder if that's because it's intended to say bonded to his mate instead. I know it's not confirmed of fated mates here, but just a thought. Dane being Dane asks Xaden if he stepped in to help Violet. Then Xaden responds, and sorry guys, I have to quote this entire thing. Quote, did I see her outnumbered and already wounded? Did I see her bravery was admirable as it was fucking reckless? End quote. He turns to Violet and she tells him she would do it again, and he responds, quote, well the fuck aware, end quote. Xaden totally fell for her already. He has all the feels for Violet and even going as far as complimenting her bravery. Oh, I love it. He continues to say, quote, did I see her fight off 3 bigger cadets? Because the answer to all of those is yes, but you're asking the wrong question, Atos. What you should be asking is if Sigale saw it too, end quote. Chills. I hope it finally fucking solidifies for Dane that Violet has what it takes. She took on 3 cadets on her own. She's a bad bitch, okay? Our girl Sigale hates bullies, and she called her boo Taryn to come and help with Andarna. I wonder, did Sigale know Taryn would bond to Violet, or was it a spare of the moment situation? What do you guys think?
I think it was an Andarna little plot master girl moment.
She played a little damsel in distress.
She really was. She really was.
She knew what she was doing.
Knew what she was doing. I blame Andarna.
We learn that Sigale and Taryn love Andarna, and at first I thought she was their little baby, but obviously not. Xaden challenges Dane and says even if he did interfere, would he still rat him out knowing it saved his best friend? Dane basically said, fuck his best friend, he obeys the rules, and boom! Dane the shit stain. Zaddy 1, Dane 0. Violet was shocked by his response, but then turned to Xaden and said, why did you make him do that? And Xaden is like, he's a shit friend.
When I read that, I felt for Violet, but also can I add that Violet recounts to herself that on the field, Xaden had taken a step toward her before Taryn showed up, meaning he was ready to break the rules for Violet. So now it's Zaddy 2 and Zane -1.
I love that. Xaden basically says, know who to trust to keep them alive. Violet says there is no we or us, basically. Xaden is like, baby girl, yes there is, and here is where we learn that mated pairs' lives are intertwined and interconnected. And if Violet dies, then Taryn dies, and then Sigale will die, and then that means Xaden will die. We also learn that each time a dragon bonds to a rider, its bond is stronger than the previous bond. Violet then realizes her life is literally tied to Xaden Ryerson. We are learning so much in this chapter. Now the cadets know that Taryn is willing to bond, and they are going to try to kill Violet when their bond is weakest, which is in these first few months, in hopes of having a chance to bond with him if they kill Violet. Violet realizes why Taryn told her to hang out with Xaden, because he's the safest person to be with at this time. There are 41 unbonded, and Violet is target number 1. After she learns all this, Xaden is like, you're calm? She's like, quote, it's a typical Wednesday for me, end quote. And our girl Vi is unfazed. The dragons are all back, and Andarna and Taryn return to Violet. Xaden leaves in this moment, we assume, to go back to Sigale. Then it is announced that although humans don't agree with Violet having 2 dragons, the law of the dragons stands, and the crowd goes wild in this moment. Taryn tells Violet that things are, quote, as it should be, end quote. He says this multiple times in this chapter, and it makes me wonder, Taryn knows something about Violet that we don't yet. As General Sorrengail says closing statements for threshing, Violet notices Xaden across the field and ice prickles her scalp again, and they lock eyes, and he holds up one finger indicating she's target number 1. Her mother instructs for cadets to step forward in front of their dragon, and Violet does so, and heat blasts her back, and she gets her new relic, which is the mark of her dragons. She somehow sees through Andarna's eyes to look at her relic, and it's described as a, quote, glistening black relic of a dragon mid-flight, stretching from one shoulder to the other, and in the center a silhouette of a shimmering golden one, end quote. The fan art I've seen in this is just gorgeous. So beautiful. I love it. Can I just note we get a hint of Andarna's sassiness? Violet says how beautiful it is, and Andarna says, quote, we know, end quote. I love her. Okay, now to ruin yet another moment, Dane the shit stain comes to Violet and is saying, oh my god, you kept both of them. And I'm like, yeah, of course she did. Dane is basically apologizing. He's like, you know I care about you and want you safe. And Violet's like, yeah. Then Dane says, quote, you have to know how I feel about you, end quote. He strokes her cheek and with his thumb, and then he kisses her. Ugh. Ew.
Major ill, because I just feel like he uses the opportunity to kiss her also to read her memories.
And he also was touching her right before this moment to help her unlace her armor so Andarna could show her what her new relic is looking like. So he was touching her quite a bit.
Yeah, he really was. And like, I wonder if it's also to make Amber jealous, because all the cadets were there, so she was probably like lurking in the corner, and she saw that and like got super jealous, and that's why she hates Violet to the point that she wants to literally kill her.
Maybe.
Violet is in disbelief he's kissing her, and she's like, wow, finally. But then she quickly realizes it's not what she wanted anymore. Awkward. On the brighter side, Xaden's POV, y'all. His POV starts off when Dane is accusing him of manipulating threshing. Xaden is playing it cool. In his inner monologue, he's like, quote, Sigale loves to remind me dragons are not concerned with the opinions of sheep or most humans, end quote. I love how we get insight on Sigale here. We definitely want more of her. I will be quoting a lot of Xaden here. and Sigale. He notices that Dane grips Violet's shoulder hard, and it's where she got hurt, quote, where she took the blade from the limp dick first year that Taryn incinerated. An unexplainable rage pumps into my veins, end quote. Xaden, you fell hard, my friend. Oh my God, I love jealous and overprotective Xaden so much.
Preach.
Xaden puts up his mental shields when he's around anyone, and we learn here that he knows what Dane's signet is as a memory reader. Xaden is even like, really, out of all the things that Xaden does, this is what Dane wants to accuse him of? When Dane steps in front of Violet, Xaden is like, seriously? Violence, as he says, doesn't need Dane's protection. And Xaden is thinking that Dane doesn't even know how she defended herself out in that field to protect Andarna. I'm sorry, I legit laughed so loud when Xaden is like, is that an accusation to Dane? And Xaden is thinking, quote, gods, please give me a reason to beat the pompous, codex-loving shit out of him just once, end quote. Then we get Sigale with the, quote, he's nothing but an irritant. Have some self-control, end quote. Sigale being like a mother hen over here. I love her. Xaden then keeps his gaze on Dane, and he's thinking of Violet, and he's about to start thinking of her, quote, tight curves, end quote. He's like, no, she's a distraction. I love how he's having an inner battle with himself right now. It's just glorious. He's definitely fell first for our girl Violet, or shall I say violence. Something I want to note here, Xaden thinks, quote, instead of glaring up at me with that fire I can't seem to stay the fuck away from, when he tells Dane what he saw out on the flight field, he's like, oh my God, she almost died right in front of me. He's worried about her, guys. My heart cannot handle this. This is going to be a long episode because I'm eating this chapter up on this reread. As he's finishing telling Dane that Sigale saw what happened out in that flight field, our girl comes back with, quote, you did not just bring me into this nonsense, end quote. Xaden fires back at Sigale, saying, you sure as hell dragged me into it. Since when do you get all mushy over smaller dragons? I love their banter. It's so iconic. Then our Sigale fires back even more and says, quote, since when do you get emotional over human women, end quote. Ooh, yes, girl. Give us the tea, sis. Sigale came to slay. Even when she knows Xaden fell first and hard, even though he's in denial right now in this moment. We learn here in his inner monologue as Dane realizes that Sigale told Taryn to come save Violet. Xaden's feelings for Violet changed at the field because he was thinking he went from wanting to kill her to protecting her. He even says, quote, not because she's brilliant or beautiful or infuriatingly capable of shredding my carefully crafted control, even though she's absolutely all of those things. No, I had no choice in this. Taryn made my decision for me. End quote. Or did he, Xaden? Do
you guys think that before Violet bonded to Taryn, Xaden could already talk to Taryn?
So I was wondering that too. I was like, did he have this bond beforehand? That's a good question. I don't know.
I feel like the way that they talk to each other, they definitely have had conversations before.
That makes a lot of sense. That could definitely be possible.
Xaden knows to stay away from him. There's a scene further along that says he is going to stay away from Taryn. He doesn't want to get his head ripped off. When he's calling out Dane and asking Dane would he bend the rules to save Violet, our girl Sigale comes back with the quote, this is cruel, even for you, end quote. Xaden goes on to defend himself about asking Dane these hard questions. Then Sigale continues to fire back at him, quote, oh, so you were not discussing that you were already moving when Taryn landed, that he had not arrived. You'd be guilty of the very thing the Colonel's offspring accuses you of doing? End quote. I love how she holds him accountable and shouts him out like, yes, girl, make him realize what he's doing too. I love her. I have to continue this banter. He says, quote, I moved on instinct to protect, end quote. Then he didn't even get to finish the sentence because Sigale says, let's not embarrass each other by letting you finish that sentence. I am fucking crying right now. And I wish I knew what he said at the end of that sentence. Xaden thinks, quote, I fucking hate when she does that. She's the only being on the continent with a sharper tongue than mine. Well, violence might give her a run for her money, end quote. I love this. I also love how he is comparing Violet and Sigale to each other. How fitting.
I just love that, like, Sigale is just, she's so dry, like the way she talks. She's just like, boy, stop lying to yourself.
I love how she's like a mother hen.
And Taryn makes so much sense because they're just both, like,
oh my
the
God,
energy
yes.
that they give is so dry and so sassy. I love it.
Xaden is getting annoyed that Dane isn't answering the question, so he pulls rank and makes him answer. When Dane does, Xaden gets even more angry, thinking how Dane doesn't deserve Violet's attention. Xaden points out that he wouldn't make the same decision as Dane, and that he would absolutely have protected Bodhi, Garrick, Liam, and now Violet's life. Xaden notices how Violet's face looks heartbroken, and he says, quote, she looks like someone just shredded her favorite book, end quote. And the reason why I mentioned this quote from him is because I love how he knows she loves books, and he knows these little things about her already. He even notes this new feeling he's getting on his lungs, which he thinks is guilt, but he's like, I know what guilt feels like.
He knows Brennan. He knows about Violet before Violet knows about him. They are, you're going to tell me that Brennan did not talk about his sisters to Xaden? He did not explain to explain like what they were like to Xaden?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. But that feeling, Xaden, you're feeling is called love, my guy. Okay? Or jealousy. Could be either or. The dragons are returning, and Xaden orders Dane to get back into formation and notes that he scurries away like the rat that he is. Violet then tells Xaden why did he do that to Dane, then walks away. Xaden is standing there dumbfounded, and he thinks, quote, I blink. Swear to Amari, the 5'0" pain in my ass is the only person who ever has the nerve to dismiss me, end quote. I love how Violet did this. She has him wrapped around her finger, and they both don't even know that yet. Xaden is like, you put too much faith in him. To note he's catching up to her, Xaden is going after Violet. Since when does our boy do that in general?
I think he also feels bad.
Oh, of course. I would hope so.
Yes, he wanted to show Violet that Dane is not a good friend. He did not take into account how hurt she would be from finding out that Dane would not step up for her. So then there's like this feeling right after of like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I think remorse is not a feeling that Xaden usually feels.
Then we are at the part where Violet tells him there is no us. And then Xaden finds himself wanting to protect her, and his heart, quote, jolts, end quote, when she's about to knock into people as they are walking. He's definitely not used to these new feelings. It's so cute to see this from his POV. Violet snaps back at him about knowing she's interdependent to Taryn. Xaden thinks, quote, anger highlighting the blue in her eyes. What in Dune's name is wrong with me when I'm noticing shit like that, end quote. Oh, Xaden, you're the best. Then our girl Sigale comes back with the quote, now who's getting all mushy, end quote. She is a queen. Xaden and Violet go back and forth about Taryn and how he told Violet to stay with Xaden because the unbonded are going to try to kill Violet. Garrick is heading towards them, and Xaden thinks that Garrick has to wait to update him on their mission. Xaden says to Sigale, quote, of all the people in the quadrant, Taryn had to bond Soaringale, end quote. Sigale responds, feel free to question his motives. Xaden then says, hell no, I prefer my head attached. I love that even Xaden knows not to fuck with Taryn. Boundaries are evident here. Xaden is having conflicting emotions, and he is obviously so into Violet, but he's still in so much denial here. Xaden and Violet are still discussing Taryn and how he believes Xaden will play bodyguard for her. Sigale comes back one more time, and she says, quote, he knows exactly how much you dislike her and how often you stare. She didn't get to finish that, guys. Xaden stops her and says, I will volunteer for every cold weather mission in existence if you... He didn't get to finish that either because Sigale is basically like, rude. You know how much I hate the cold. It's not my fault you can't control yourself. I live for their relationship. I love it so much.
I'm so glad that Xaden has Sigale. I'm glad he bonded
sure.
a female dragon because Xaden, his mom is not part of the picture. There's not a lot of women in his life, you know? And
Right.
Sigale is like that motherly bond. I'm so glad that he bonded a female dragon and not a male dragon, but a female. And I think that is very telling.
And can we note that Sigale is basically us? Like, we don't want to be out in the cold.
Yeah,
I get her. I understand her. Come on, Xaden. Do not do that to our girl.
My tropical body does not belong up here in the in the New York winter.
I know. I even felt, when I was reading it, I even felt cold. I was like, ooh, like, no, nobody wants to do that. Xaden notes that Sigale might be ruthless, but she hates cold weather. She only flies near the cold if they are going to Aretia. Xaden definitely has been going back and forth. Also, huge credit to Xaden fighting with 2 women right now. Can we just point that out? He's bantering with the both of them meaning Sigale and Violet at the same damn time. I need Violet and Sigale to become besties and gang up on Xaden. This is a back and forth between Xaden and Sigale, and I have to quote this entire thing. Xaden says to Sigale, quote, "He knows exactly how much I value my own life. My gaze roaming down Sorengale's body. There's absolutely nothing to dislike about what I see. In fact, if Amari herself ever designed a woman with my downfall in mind, well, fuck. Maybe that's exactly what violence is. My downfall. Soft skin, sharp mind, fierce temper, deadly with a dagger, brave to a fault, and utterly unruffled. She's 2 years your junior and in your chain of command," Sigale says. He fires back at Sigale again, saying, quote, "And you're 50 years younger than Taryn. Your point?" End quote. I just love the both of them. Their banter throughout this whole chapter is just everything. And guys, I think Sigale's my new favorite character in this series. Rereading this is such a gem. Xaden is walking back towards Sigale once Taryn lands, and Garrick immediately knows that Xaden is unwell. Garrick is like, "So, the general's daughter?" Xaden is basically like, "Shut up." He's in such denial, but Garrick doesn't fall for it. He even points out Xaden is not okay. At this time, Melgreen just announced that Violet could keep both dragons. He knew that the dragons would let Taryn get away with it because they want him back on the battlefield. Xaden notices the different bonds that are now present. He says his bond with Sigale is sapphire blue, Taryn is onyx, and the silver one is the one he has with Violet. Since he said Taryn is onyx here, is onyx Storm, then Taryn and Violet instead of Xaden and Violet? I wonder. Just saying. I love how connected Xaden and Violet are, because when he held up his finger, he was thinking the same thing she was, and that she's target number 1. Xaden is talking to Garrick about putting Liam in her squad for protection, and Xaden even notes how Violet may even like Liam. He says Liam is his adoptive brother. Xaden is in fact the one who taught him how to fight. Dane comes in and unlaces Violet's armor so Andarna can show Violet her new relic. Xaden is getting pissed off. He's thinking, why is he touching her? Garrick, being a great wingman, is like, "Relax, dude." He's putting the armor back on, and Garrick is smiling at him, definitely enjoying jealous Xaden as much as we are. Then Dane reaches for Violet's face and kisses her. Guys, Xaden is so unwell that I have to quote this entire thing. Quote, "Fire rushes through my veins and shadows spasm around me, distorting my vision for a second. Dane fucking Atos has his mouth on my violence. Not mine, but that doesn't stop the knot in my stomach from unfurling, spreading like acid into my system, burning through my chest, and making it hard to draw a breath until that snot-nosed asswipe lifts his head." End quote.
Oh
I am also unwell, and I love snot-nosed asswipe, but okay.
That's almost as good as His ass is flat.
It is. His booty. You didn't even say ass. You said his booty is flat. We love a jealous Xaden. I just imagine him across this field with his shadows swirling around him uncontrollably. What a sight to see. Garrick obviously notices this and he's like, dude, you okay? Guys, I didn't notice how bad it was. Xaden had to even pin himself with his shadows, so it forces him to not move over there and attack Dane. He has it bad. So bad.
He's not even in like deep love with her yet. Imagine how he would be later if he were to see something like that when he is.
Xaden even thinks to himself, how dare Dane kiss her when he would let her die? Especially when he didn't finish that thought. Segale, guys. Segale says, quote, yes, what would you do? End quote. Sassy mother hen. Then Xaden thinks to himself, quote, fuck me, what wouldn't I do? End quote.
Mm-hmm.
Garrick comes in again. I love how Xaden's people like just fucking get him. Garrick comes in again and he's like, dude, you look sick. He starts laughing at Xaden. I love this. I also love Garrick because he points out that Violet doesn't need Liam. And Garrick says, quote, in 20 years, I don't think I've seen you jealous before. This is amazing, end quote. And then Xaden puts a word to this feeling, jealousy. And I think love too. But yes, Xaden is like, no, I can't feel this. I need to stay away from violence. Segale comes back once again and she says, quote, but you won't, end quote. Ladies and gents, this is the end of chapter 16 of Xaden's POV.
So good.
So sorry it was so long, but it was just amazing and I need more.
I love that, we're breaking it down and going little by little because it was so enjoyable. I was literally sitting here like smiling and giggling to myself.
Actually, I did see that. I was like, doing my thing and I see Steph literally like smiling and I see Bella putting her hands to her cheeks.
And just storytelling was just given. It was so good. I'm so glad. Thanks, you for breaking that down. I really enjoyed that.
I'm sorry for it to be so long. But anyway,
I thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, let's get into chapter 17. The quote from the beginning of the chapter is, quote, it is therefore only natural that the more powerful the dragon, the more powerful the signet its rider manifests. One should beware of a strong rider who bonds a smaller dragon, but even warier of the unbonded cadet who will stop at nothing to seize a chance to bond. End quote. Major Offrenda's Guide to the Rider's Quadrant. Unauthorized edition. After 2 months and after threshing, the remaining cadets received their own private rooms. We see Sawyer leaving Rhiannon's room as Violet waits for Rhi. Ooh, the tea is piping hot.
Hot. Can I just say how happy I am for Sawyer? Good for him. He bonded a dragon. He's a part of the best squad ever. And he got some. Also, go read, by the way.
But, he leaves the room like all shy and he gets a little red. It's like, he's just so adorable. We find out that Violet is no longer doing breakfast duty, which worries her because she uses her duty to poison her matches. Breakfast duty is seen as a less desirable duty and given to the unbonded cadets so that the bonded cadets can use their energy for flight lessons. Violet questions Rhi and Sawyer hooking up, but Rhi says she felt like celebrating. As she should. She also asks Violet why she hasn't celebrated, if you get what I mean. Mm-hmm. Vi responds that she hasn't found anyone she wants to celebrate with. She's just lying to herself at this point. Rhi asks Violet if she's interested in a certain superior officer, and she means Dane. Violet tells her that although she hoped there would be something between her and Dane, she says, quote, when he kissed me, there was nothing there. End quote.
Violet knows who her man is.
Reddox joins the girls and they start talking about where their relic is. Reddox is on his upper arm, a brown mark of a dragon silhouette. Violet's is on her back, a black dragon mid-flight stretching shoulder to shoulder, and in the center, the silhouette of a shimmering gold one. Rhi says it's somewhere Reddox will never see, insinuating that it's in a private area, which I'm dying. Why would her dragons mark her somewhere private? Or is she lying? The three head into the gathering hall for breakfast, and as they sit down at a partly occupied table, those sitting there get up and leave, saying that the table is theirs and apologizing to Violet. Jackass is being squeezed out of his table on the other side of the hall, and Imogen joins their table explaining that, quote, the morning after threshing is always a clusterfuck. Power balance shifts, and you, little Sorrengail, are now about to be the most powerful rider in the quadrant, end quote.
Damn right. She is our girl Violet, and she's a boss-ass bitch.
Hell yeah.
Yes, and Violet is also very discerning, very mindful, very demure here, because instead of relishing in Jack's downfall, she just thinks to herself, quote, feral dogs bite harder when they're cornered.
Ree remarks if that's the reason Imogen is sitting and talking to them, as Quinn, a second-year student, takes a seat next to Imogen. The girls are so right to be confused. Imogen, who broke Violet's arm, now she's being nice. I would have never trusted her if she just sat at my table. I would be so confused. Violet quickly notices Quinn's patches, one of which has two silhouettes. Could her signet be cloning?
Ooh, that would be so interesting. I also want to point out here that Violet says that her favorite one is the one beside the flame section because it signifies that their squad has the most surviving members since the parapet, also known as the year's Iron Squad. So, gosh, like that heart of hers is so big. Like, how is she walking?
Mm-hmm.
The table begins to converse about the events of threshing, remarking that they are surprised Oren did not bond, but that Jackass did. Which again, I'm so confused about because why did Jack's dragon bond to such a hateful person, especially one that tried to kill another dragon?
It's an orange tail. They're just giant orange crackheads.
I don't know. They just love the bad guys. They love the villains. I don't know. There's something about these orange dragons.
They're unwell. Imogen tells Violet, who is only eating fruit because she's afraid Oren will poison her, ironic, that she needs to eat more protein. And she doesn't trust Imogen's intentions, even when Taryn chimes in that she can trust Imogen. Imogen tells Violet to meet her after class in the sparring gym. A quick, lightning-fast glance towards the dais as Violet's neck prickles. Tells Violet that this is an order by Xaden. Imogen also informs the table that squads are about to be combined from 4 groups into 2 in every section. Violet looks towards the dais where Xaden is seated. She noticed Garrick looking at her with worry. Then she looks at Xaden, and my poor girl has got it bad for Zaddy. Her chest tightens with just a glance. Damn, sis. Same. She makes note that, quote, Xaden Ryerson is now in the business of keeping his mortal enemy alive, end quote. I wish she knew just how much he has to keep her alive. Poor, clueless Violet. Xaden has sacrificed so much from the beginning. The cadets are given their flight leathers without any insignias, as those would give them up in battle. As other cadets look at Taryn with fear, Violet thinks to herself that she would also back away if those teeth were bared at her. Taryn says, quote, no, you wouldn't, because you didn't. You stayed and defended Andarna, end quote. Our grumpy sunshine Taryn keeps telling Violet to pay attention since she is badgering him with so many questions. Only 92 dragons out of 101 bonded to cadets. Violet questions Taryn. I thought 101 were willing to bond, plus you. Taryn replies, willing doesn't mean they found worthy riders, end quote. Which is crazy. Why weren't those cadets worthy? How was Jack worthy? I don't know.
That's a good question. Like, why was he worthy?
I don't know.
Like, there's something we don't know
There
about
is
him.
something
You're
we
right.
don't
I think
know.
you're onto
I
something.
don't know. Kaori reminds the new riders that, quote, there are 41 unbonded riders who would kill to be standing where you are. And your dragons know that your bond is at its weakest point right now. So if you fail, there's a good chance your dragon might let you if it thinks the unbonded will be a better choice, end quote. How freaking harsh is that?
Super harsh.
But our boo Taryn knows who he wants. He wants our girl.
Mm-hmm.
He really does, because like she kept falling like a million times.
He just caught her and then threw her up on his back like, girl, I got you. I'm so dead. As Professor Kaori breaks into a sprint, racing the dozen feet toward his dragon's foreleg and makes a vertical climb to mount, a defeated Violet knows this is not possible for her, especially with her ankle still healing. Terran makes some accommodations for her by dipping his shoulder and making his leg into a ramp. As the two take off into the sky, we see Terran again use his magic to keep Violet's seat. At Terran being in front of Guy, Violet says she will make multiple appeals to Dune, the god of strength and war. Terran tells her, quote, dragons pay no heed to your puny gods, end quote. Such a sassy grump. I can't with him. A rider falls off their dragon as Violet tells Terran to stop holding her to him. She doesn't want him to waste his energy on holding her when she knows he needs it for channeling when they go into battle. Terran tells her it's a minuscule amount of my power, which I think so too. I don't think the amount of energy Terran uses to keep Violet on him is that much to worry about. But I digress. He lets go and she immediately falls. Again and again. As a sore Violet makes her way to the sparring gym and hears her name being called out by Dane, the shit stain. In the conversation between the two, Violet tells Dane she fell a lot, and Dane answers that he thought she'd be fine when Terran chose her. This makes Violet agitated. A small combo between Terran and Violet starts, and Dane notices she is distracted. She just tells him she isn't used to having Terran in her head. Ironically, Dane tells Violet to tell Terran to take it easy on her. Quote, it's not like there's any aerial threat out there besides the Griffins, end quote, which there is, but I digress, because he don't know shit.
Clearly, he don't know
nothing.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. We know why Terran is going so hard on Violet's training. He knows what awaits them.
Yes. Wow. That's some good insight there.
Dane and Violet try to talk about the awkwardness between them. Vi brings up the kiss, and Dane says, quote, it never should have happened, end quote.
Damn right.
Relief curses through Violet since she thinks he feels like Sheaf does. It was nothing. No spark. A mistake. But a sadness enters his eyes because that is not what he meant. I think Dane totally wants Violet. And in this moment, he notices that she doesn't feel like he does. He clears it up for her, though, saying that it is frowned upon to have a relationship with anyone in his chain of command. And Vi notices it's all politics for him. It makes her lose some respect for him, too, as the only reason he isn't pursuing her is because of rank. He says he hopes next year will be different. Loser!
Finally. And now Dane is just a fart in the water.
Did you just say a fart in the water?
I can't. This has been my favorite episode so far. I'm sorry.
He is.
Can't, Bella. You're just too good. Thankfully, Imogen breaks the awkwardness and calls Violet for their training. Violet asks Imogen if she's only doing this because Xaden is baking her. And Imogen responds, rule number 1, he's Ryerson to you. First year, and you never get to question me about him ever, end quote.
I literally thought him and Imogen were together after she said that. Like, I literally thought that. I was like, oh, okay, bitch, like what? But he was looking at Violet though, so did you know that?
Once again, Violet feels the effect of jealousy as she thinks to herself that, quote, with that kind of fierce loyalty, they have to be lovers, end quote. She does not like that thought, not one bit. Not at all. This concludes chapter 17. A quote in chapter 18 that really stuck out for me is, quote, the scent of earth and stone fills my lungs the deeper I descend. And the stab of longing that's hit me nearly every day for the past month since I was assigned to archives duty isn't quite as sharp as it was yesterday. And that wasn't as sharp as the day before, end quote. The archives smell like parchment, bookbinding glue and ink. They smell like home. In the scribe quadrant, you are only meant to sign. But that doesn't stop Jasenia and Violet from showing their happiness at seeing each other. Jasenia and Violet catch up, with Jasenia saying she was horrified when she heard that Violet was forced into the writer's quadrant. As Violet thinks over everything she's endured so far, she realizes that she's happy and she's where she's meant to be. Jasenia takes Violet's returns and her requests from Professor De Vera. But then Violet asks for a copy of Fables of the Baron, more because she feels a stab of homesickness at being in the archives. Jasenia says she's not familiar with that title, and Violet says it isn't for academics, but a, quote, collection of folklore my dad shared with me. A little on the dark side, but honestly, I love it, end quote. As Jasenia leaves to pull the other books her professor asked for, she thinks to herself, quote, now that I'm going to be the one wielding magic, I could use a few good folk tales of what happens when humans defile the power channeled to them. No doubt they were written as a parable to warn us of the dangers of bonding dragons. But in Navarre's 600-year history of unification, I've never read of a single writer losing their soul to their powers. The dragons keep us from that. End quote. Little does she know, she is on to something yet so far away from the truth. As Violet waits, Professor Markham, who is leading a squad of first-year cadets, stops to talk to Vi, and he states to his squad that, quote, Cadet Sorengale here was my prized student until the writer's quadrant stole her away, end quote. Violet continues to feel that homesickness while being in the archives, so much that Andarna feels her sadness. She's really in tune with Violet, which is so sweet. Andarna tells her, quote, it's hard to love a second home as much as the first, end quote. But Violet quickly replies, it's easy when the second home is the right one. Violet finally is starting to recognize that she is exactly where she's meant to be. Jasenia returns with the requested books, except for the one book Violet asked her for. Jasenia tells her she couldn't find it, and she even searched the catalog for Wyvern, but there was nothing. This sticks out as odd to Violet since the archives has either a copy or the original of every book in Navarre. Quote, only ultra-rare forbidden tombs are excluded. When did folklore become either of those? End quote. Oh, Violet, you little blind bat.
Oh my God. I did not even catch that.
It went over my head too. I didn't notice that. As you're saying this, I'm like, oh shit.
I know.
This is like pretty relatable because it touches on today's world where we have people in positions of power banning books that have important knowledge.
Jasenia tells Vi that she looks different, but not bad, just different. And Vi tells her she is. So much has changed for her. She asks Jasenia if being a scribe is everything she wanted. Jasenia replies, quote, it is everything and more. The responsibility we have not only to record our history, but to speed information from the front lines is more than I could have imagined. End quote. Sneaky, sneaky scribes. So far, I do not think Jasenia is in on it, but in this world, you can never be certain. And let's remember, in the beginning of Fourth Wing, this story is being transcribed by Jasenia. During lunchtime, Violet finds out through Riddoch, who is retelling the story of Sawyer's signet manifesting, that Sawyer is a metallurgist. He can manipulate metals. Quinn says that they'll manifest their signet when your dragon is ready to trust you with all that power. And through Imogen, we find out that, quote, the relic your dragons transferred onto you at threshing is a conduit to let all the magic into your body. If you don't manifest the signet and let it out, then after a bunch of months, bad things happen, end quote. They head out. They hear Jack Ass saying, I knew it would work, to Caroline Ashton, hugging her affectionately. I can't believe there's a kind bone in him.
I even forgot he had a lover. Ew. And first of all, who would date him? Like, he's a murderous prick.
But I don't even think he knows how to be affectionate because it said he was, quote, thumping her head affectionately, end quote. Or maybe I just, like, can't envision what that looks like.
Like, good dog. Good dog.
Well, I read this as Jack and Caroline planned something for a dragon to break its bond with their original writer. Though it is said that the writer died on their first flight lesson, it might be innocent, but knowing how murderous Jack is, I believe they did this so Caroline, who was unbonded, found a dragon.
That is very much possible. Very good insight, Steph. I like that.
That's actually a great point. I didn't even notice that. Even on a reread. Good point.
During flight lessons, Taryn tells us Vi only fell about a dozen times, which is apparently better than she has been doing. I personally love the banter between Taryn and Violet. It is giving dad. It is giving grumpy grandpa. Vi asks for Andarna so she isn't stuck with his grumpy ass. And Taryn replies, quote, "This grumpy ass just caught you a dozen times, Silver One," end quote. She asks him to stop and to call her Violet. And he replies, quote, "And I could call you Violence like the wing leader." He notices what's going on. He's reading the sign.
I love how him and Sigale are just getting at their riders about the attraction towards each other. I love that.
It's so freaking sassy of him. He knows Vi's little thoughts. Dane approaches and Taryn immediately goes into defensive mode as he knows that Dane is angry. Taryn continues to glare and bare his teeth at Dane while growling. He tells Violet, quote, "Tell him if he harms you, I'll scorch the ground where he stands," end quote. And even though Dane says he would rather die than harm her, he is still angry with her. Taryn does not trust Dane, and I am willing to bet he knows something about Dane that raises his defenses on behalf of Violet. Dane finally explodes at Violet, wondering why she hasn't told him that she isn't keeping her seat. I want to note the specific line that Dane says that just gives me the biggest ick. He says, quote, "All this time I've been letting Kaori teach you," end quote. Excuse me, sir, who the fuck do you think you are? What do you mean letting? Who made you in charge? Who gave you the grand idea that you can dictate Violet's life? I am livid. Violet gets angry right back and tells him it is not a secret that everyone in the squad knows, and it strikes me that Dane has not been watching over his squad. Where has he been? As squad leader, he should be present and in the know of what is happening. As the anger in his voice turns to hurt, he tells her, quote, "You didn't tell me," end quote. The communication between these two has been dwindling. Violet no longer feels that comfort she once felt for him, and that Imogen is only training her because Xaden asked her to. He tells her that Amber lit into him for an hour about how Violet acted dishonorably. Fuck you, Dane, and fuck you too, Amber. Why did they discuss this? When did they discuss this? Before or after they fucked? I'm sorry. I just can't. Like, why are they talking about it? And why are they talking about Violet? And why is Dane defending Amber and not defending Violet? Gross. The argument continues to go sideways, with Dane doubling down that he doesn't question the integrity of Amber, a wing leader, which is gross because he just did so on his supposed best friend. As more and more of Dane's doubts about Violet come out, I'm going to quote this big moment for the two best friends, as to me, it is the moment Violet finally sticks up for herself. She's finally done with him, as she says, quote, "This place cuts away the bullshit and the niceties, revealing whoever you are at your core." I repeat his words from this summer. Isn't that what you said to me? Is this who you really are at your core? Someone so enamored with the rules that he doesn't know when to bend or break them for someone he cares about. Someone so focused on the least I'm capable of doing. Can't believe I can do so much more, end quote. The warmth drains from his brown eyes. Violet says, quote, "Let's get something straight, Dane." I take a step closer, but the distance between us only widens. The reason we will never be anything more than friends isn't because of your rules. It's because you have no faith in me. Even now, when I've survived against all odds and bonded not just one dragon, but two, you still think I won't make it. So forgive me but you're about to be some of the bullshit this place cuts away from me. End quote. Ouch. But she needed to say it.
Finally, the fire we needed to see from her to blow at Dane. She incinerated him.
She walks away. She catches Xaden and Garrick leaning against the wall, and she flips him off as he raises an eyebrow at her. Violence indeed.
I love Violet. She's just a boss bitch. Like, let's just...
She's like, fuck you. Fuck you. And you know what? Fuck you too.
But come on, give Garrick a break. He's the only one defending her, by the way, throughout this whole book.
Yeah.
So she needs to be nice to Garrick.
Interrupted by a cadet who is screaming.
Xaden instinctively moves in front of Violet.
He begins to recite everyone's thoughts who he sees, one of which being Dane, as he says, Dane's thoughts. Quote, is Violet going to hate me forever? Why can't she see that I just want to keep her alive? How is he? End quote. Poor guy, seriously. I don't doubt that he does have good intentions and genuinely loves Vi, but he has gone about it the wrong way. And well, it is much too late to apologize. Violet comes to the realization that Jeremiah's signet has just manifested as an intrinsic. He can read minds. Just like no comment, y'all. No comment. Reddock, who is standing next to Vi, is shoved aside, and the scent of mint belonging to our baby boy steadies our girl's heart. Xaden tells Violet to start reciting whatever bookish shit you've learned. Which, okay, someone has clearly been paying close attention to our girl. He knows exactly what she does to clear her mind. But Jeremiah's gaze locks on Garrick, and Garrick says, quote, damn it all to hell. He'll know about... We can assume he's talking about Tyrandor and all they've been doing. Xaden acts as shadows snake up Jeremiah's legs, winding around his chest and covering his mouth. A professor pushes through, cracks Jeremiah's neck once he learns he's an intrinsic, a deadly signet. The professor being Professor Carr. A sleeping Violet dreams of her father. He tells her, quote, you always have to check your sources. Remember that first-hand accounts are always more accurate, but you have to look deeper, Violet. You have to see who is telling the story. End quote. In the dream, Violet replies, but what if I want to be a writer? A voice breaks through the dream telling her to wake. In the dream, her father responds, quote, you're not like them, Violet. That's not your path, as it's for the best. Your mother has never understood that while writers may be the weapons of our kingdom, it's the scribes who have all the real power in the world. End quote. The same voice breaks through the dream again. Wake before you die. Now. Violet's eyes fly open just as she notices all the writers in her room. She manages to roll away, but not fast enough, as a blade slams into her back. And once again, thank you, Mira. There are 7 cadets in her room. Mm-hmm. 4 are unbonded men and 3 are unbonded women, as one, who Violet recognizes, runs out the door and slams it shut. Oren, that bastard, remarks that her armor...
Son of a bitch.
Hell yeah. Fuck you, Oren. Remarks that her armor is impenetrable. Thank God. Violet tells him she should have killed him in threshing, which Taryn told her to. The women start to go for her, one whose dagger misses her while Violet throws her dagger and it lands in her shoulder. Too late, she realizes she needed that dagger and she just threw it. Since all her weapons are stored near the door, Taryn in her head is helping Assista out. But Violet is cornered. There are too many of them for her to fight off. Oren grips her throat. Taryn, panicking, tells her, quote, he's almost there, end quote. But she is losing air. She notices that Oren is not only after her, but he is after Taryn. He wants to kill Violet so he can bond Taryn. Violet realizes she's going to die. Her last thought is what would have been. Quote, would I have been strong enough to graduate? Would I have been worthy of Taryn and Andarna? Would I have finally made my mother proud? End quote. That breaks me. In the end, Violet just wants to make her mother proud. But as a knife tip touches her skin, the bedroom door slams open and Andarna screams, mine!
Oh my
And it's
God.
chapter 18.
I had to literally sit here in silence as you read that part again, and I'm just like literally listening for every word you're saying. I'm just like, oh my God, that part had me in a
I was like,
chokehold.
holy shit when I read it. Chapter 19, quote, in response to the Great War, dragons claimed the western lands and griffins the central ones, abandoning the barrens and the memory of General Daramore, who nearly destroyed the continent with his army. Our allies sailed home, and we began a period of peace and prosperity as the provinces of Navarre united for the first time behind the safety of our wards, under the protection of the first bonded dragons. End quote. Navarre, an unedited history by Colonel Louis Markham. Quick, I can't hold it, Andarna says, and Violet notices that everyone in the room is frozen. Oren's skin is malleable, and she is able to shove the knife away from her neck. The knife that already has a single drop of blood. So fucking close. Violet frees herself from Oren as she squeezes between him and a giant guy from the second wing. She takes a look at everyone who's in her room and notices that in the doorway is Xaden. Violet knows that for the first time since the parapet, she is relieved to see him. Andarna gasps and chaos resumes. Xaden clearly is like, what the flying fuck just happened? But that takes a back seat as he tells everyone in the room, quote, you're all fucking dead, end quote, his shadow streaming before him. Oren drops his dagger and tries to surrender. Fucking asshole. But Xaden reminds us and them that it's against the codex to attack another rider in their sleep. Xaden's shadows grabs every assailant but Oren by the throat, and he kills them. All at fucking once. No struggle, all power, no thoughts, just actions. In the next moment, Oren tries to explain, but Xaden has seen enough, and he slits Oren's throat open. Garrick and Bodhi show up. Bodhi's similarity to Xaden given Violet a pause. They're on cleanup duty. Violet thinks to herself, quote, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive, end quote. Xaden out loud says, quote, yes, you're alive, end quote. And again, how the fuck did we not catch that? Or Violet catch that?
I'm so mad at myself that I did not see that.
Jesus, Lord.
Take the wheel.
But poor, shell-shocked Violet remarks, quote, I didn't realize I said that out loud. Xaden asks Violet if she's hurt, and all of Violet's adrenaline that helped block her pain causes her to feel all her injuries. She especially is having a hard time breathing as she feels every breath she takes feels like glass. She is still in shock and does not reply back. As he tilts her chin up, she notices a hint of pain in his eyes, and she finally lets him know her ribs might be bruised, but not broken. Taryn breaks through her thoughts and tells her to trust Xaden, but she says it's not that easy. Though she listens to him and tells Xaden that her vest is dragon scales. She states, quote, it's why I've lived this long, end quote. But Xaden says, quote, ingenious, though I'd say there are multiple reasons for why you've made it this far, end quote. He's always lifting her up, even in this moment, which I'm sure he can feel her panic, her fear, everything that she's just went through. He's being so gentle with her. She tries to say she's fine, even though she's not, and Xaden tells her to never lie to him, which is fucking ironic coming from him. And yeah. A lie by omission is still a fucking lie, everyone. Garrick and Bodhi plus their help finally finished taking out all the bodies from Violet's room, and Xaden asks Vi to let him see if they broke her ribs. She turns her back on him, but can see him through her mirror as he begins to undo her corset. She notices, quote, his jaw flexes once, and something that reminds me of raw hunger filters across his expression before he locks it down, drawing my hair over my shoulder with surprising gentleness, end quote. Sweet baby Jesus, the tension between these two, I cannot handle it anymore. Vi's breath quickens, but not because of her injuries, but because she is feeling hot and bothered by Zaddy. He finally gets her corset off and sees that her ribs are in fact not broken, but bruised, as Violet had stated. Homegirl knows what a bone break sounds and feels like. Xaden laces her back up and he drops to his knees in front of her. Is it hot in here? Or is it just me? Holy Mother of God.
Jesus.
Jesus, take the wheel. He starts to put her boots on and lace them up. That is so hot. Oh my gosh. He also wraps her cloak around her shoulders and buttons it at her collar like she's something precious. No, Xaden, the precious one is you. So gentle and sweet, especially after this traumatic moment for Violet. They make their way down the hallway holding hands, guys. And Violet thinks to herself she would climb him like a tree if presented with the right circumstances. So would I, Vi. So would I. She also says, quote, but in my defense and in a sick, twisted way, his rescue was pretty damn hot, end quote. And I agree. Xaden takes her to a secret hidden tunnel and have this little interesting convo. And I'm going to tell you all about it because he says he doesn't fuck first years, let alone her. But then Violet says, quote, I'd have to be a masochist to sleep with you. And I can assure you I'm not, end quote. Baby girl, you are, and we are too. Xaden knows that even though she is violent, he noticed that none of the three she wounded were kill shots. And she tells him she's never killed anyone. She doesn't want to. She didn't plan for this life. She didn't choose a thug life. The thug life chose her.
I need the whole book of his
We
POV.
just need this whole series and his
endless amounts of copies of that.
We find out Xaden is taking her to Terran to find out what happened. The secret tunnel takes him to the flight field. Violet asks him what he was doing tonight. He does not look like he was sleeping, and he made it to her room within minutes. He tells her that maybe he sleeps in his armor too. But silly Vi tells him, quote, then you should pick more trustworthy bedmates, end quote. And he gives her a real, genuine smile. He still will not tell her where he was, stating it's third-year business. Lies. Terran, Sigale, and Andarna await them. Our sweetie cupcake Andarna, worried sick over Violet, checks in with her. Xaden and Terran quickly ruin the moment by arguing, which Violet is like, what the fuck, because she realizes they can both hear each other. Riders aren't exactly supposed to talk to another dragon that is not theirs, let alone one like Terran. Do not dare try and read me, human, or you'll regret it, Terran says. Easter eggs after Easter eggs after Easter eggs after Easter eggs. Jesus, we were all dumb.
I don't even know. Like, I'm literally like, wow. Like, what was I reading the first time? Did I actually read?
I don't think I did.
Like, did I read?
I was so excited. I was like caught up in the moment.
I think I was like, oh my God, Xaden.
And finally finds out how they can all communicate with each other. And it's because Sigale and Terran are mates. And Darna says, quote, nature likes all things in balance. That's the first thing we are taught, end quote. Vi realizes the bond does not extend to Andarna, as Violet cannot hear her. Quote, Feathertails shouldn't bond because they can accidentally give their powers to humans. Dragons can't channel, not really until we're big, but we're all born with something special, end quote. I would really like to know what Terran and Sigale, their special powers were when they were little babies, because this is a badass one for Andarna. Violet realizes that Andarna is a hatchling, a baby, a dragon a few years away from maturity. Violet, completely and utterly shocked, yells at Terran. Even Terran is like, she's gonna do what she's gonna do.
He knows better.
Sigale chimes in, stating that Andarna would be full grown in a year or two. But if she thought she'd actually bond, she would have objected to her right benefaction. Xaden asks Sigale if Andarna is hers, if she's hidden a hatchling for the last 2 years, and he's hurt. But Sigale is obviously like, no, she would not let her offspring bond while still feathered. We find out that Andarna's parents passed away before she hatched. We also find out that, quote, bonding too young allows them to give their gift directly, and a rider could easily drain them and burn out, end quote. An affronted Violet quickly states she would never. Andarna replies that she knows, and it's the reason she chose Vi. Sigale tells them no one can find out what feather-tailed dragons can do, and that the elder dragons are placing more stringent protections on them. And Darna finally clears the air on what exactly happened. She made time stop, literally. To the shock of both Violet and Xaden, Vi notices what exactly it costs to Andarna to channel. She is exhausted, barely keeping her eyes open. The last thing Violet says to Andarna is, quote, "I'll do my best to be worthy," end quote. Vi starts to panic that Professor Carr is going to kill her for this gift, but Xaden reminds her that the only reason Jeremiah is killed is because he was an intrinsic. A mind reader is a capital offense. Jeez Louise. But Xaden assures her no one except them will know, nor will they find out. Taryn and Sigil take an exhausted Andarna with them. She struggles flying, but our grumpy sunshine Taryn flies up under her, taking her weight and continuing on to the Vale.
I think it's so cute and like maybe intentional that he says, quote, "Let's go, Golden One," end quote, to little Andarna, similar to the nickname that he has for Violet, the silver one.
As Violet and Xaden head back to the tunnel, Xaden asks Vi to promise him that she won't tell anyone about the time stopping. And not just for her safety, but because, quote, "rare abilities, when kept secret, are the most valuable form of currency we possess," end quote. This makes Vi wary. He then says they need to find out how the unbonded cadets got to her room. And finally, Vi tells him someone ran away before he got there. Someone who unlocked the door from the outside. And as we trail off at the end of chapter 19, we get a feel that she told him exactly who opened the door.
Now we're in chapter 20. Captain Fitzgibbons reads the scroll that had the names of the cadets that tried to kill Violet, and she admits to Reed that she is starting to get used to being the target. Violet remembers confessing to Xaden, who she saw open the door, and she thinks that he does not believe her. She sees him and her heart stutters at the sight of him. She compares him to effective poisons and pretty packages because he is, quote, "beautiful and lethal," end quote. She thinks, quote, "He looks deceptively calm as he approaches, but I can feel his tension as if it's my own, like a panther prowling towards his prey," end quote. Violet thinks to herself, quote, "Oh shit, this feeling right here, the way my breath catches my entire body draws tight when he's near, is why I haven't taken anyone to bed or celebrated like the rest of my perfectly normal friends. This feeling is why I haven't wanted anyone else, because I want him," end quote. Period.
She wants baby boy. She finally is like, wait a second. I think I like him.
Xaden goes to Dane, telling him that Liam will switch places with Vaughn Penley. Liam is now in V's squad. After seeing Liam and his rebellion mark, she automatically knew that Liam was assigned by Xaden to be her new bodyguard. She tells Xaden that she does not need a bodyguard, causing others around them to gasp because of her sudden outburst toward the wing leader, which we do see that she has been doing very often and very comfortably. Xaden stands directly in front of her and says, quote, "You do though, as we both learned last night. And I can't be everywhere you are, but Liam is here. He's a first year, so he can be in every class and every challenge, and I even had him assigned to library duty. So I hope you get used to him, Soaring Gale," end quote. Violet called him out, saying that he is overstepping, and his voice drops as he says, quote, "You haven't begun to see overstepping," end quote. We know what he wants to step into. Even though he does want to sincerely protect her, he is definitely going to go the extra mile so he can be close, real close. He tells Violet that Liam will be staying in the room next door to her room. Dane turns around to quiet them and sees the injuries on Vi's neck from the night before. She reassures him that she's fine. He is so distraught that he doesn't realize that he has been staring back at her for so long. He was hurt that she didn't tell him, but she knew he wouldn't believe her. Violet sighs at some point and says, quote, "I miss sex," end quote. And in that moment, she is thinking about Xaden. Where is the scalp prickling moment when you need it? I really wish he read her mind at this part.
That's all she wants now, to get all up in there.
Riddoch jokingly offers himself, maybe jokingly, and Violet says to him, quote, "I miss good sex."
Mm-hmm. They're just so funny. They're so cute together. They're just like, I made it. Let's live our best life.
Dane tells them to shut the hell up as Xaden starts climbing the steps to the dais, and Violet is stunned as she whispers, quote,
this is about me, end quote. She compares him to his father because of the intense presence that he possesses. He addresses the crowd and explains what happened last night, which prompted a few gasps from the crowd. He continued saying that attacking a writer in their sleep is against the Codex. He says, quote, as we all know, this is a violation of Article 3, Section 2 of the Dragon Writers Codex, and, in addition to being dishonorable, is a capital offense, end quote. He explains that he had to kill the unbonded attackers because of the danger they posed. He then says that the writer behind the attack fled before he arrived, and it was a writer who had access to the map of where all first years are assigned to sleep. He then says, quote, I call you to answer for your crime against Cadet Sorengale, Wing Leader Amber Mavis, end quote. This bish, the very one who tried to get Violet disqualified for using her dagger in the gauntlet, the one who is so super serious about the Codex. Dane the shitstain doesn't believe it and seems to command V to, quote, get up there and tell everyone that he's lying. This hurts V because this disbelief feels like a betrayal. I literally, when I read that, I wanted to punch my book. Like, who the fuck does he think he is, using his authority in that way towards his best friend? He doesn't even ask her questions to find out if it's the truth. He just immediately thinks she's lying or wrong and commands her to do something regardless of hearing her out.
Hold on 1 second. Can we notice how Dane the fucking shitstain just thinks he could command whatever the fuck Violet does? Like, he keeps doing that, and on a reread, it's getting me even more pissed off than the first read.
Xaden has a higher rank than he does, and he didn't even do that to Violet, just saying. Dane counters with, quote, wing leaders are beyond reproach, end quote. And Violet then says, quote, then why are you so quick to call out your own wing leader, end quote.
Ooh.
So right.
Defending her
But
zaddy.
she's right, because why is he like sticking up for Amber and believing her over Violet and his own wing leader? So he's putting Amber up here beyond his quote unquote best friend.
It was such a perfect answer, and she got him because he got quiet and she knew that they had something going on last year that is against his precious rules, I'm assuming, which is infuriating because he seems to want to break the rules when it serves him.
I did not even realize that. You're right. He broke the rules with Amber because she is his superior. So he is just a fucking liar.
Amber tries to plead that she's innocent, and Dane still believes her over Violet, his own best friend. He then tells Violet to stop all of this, to which she replies, quote, she was with them in my room. And he still doesn't believe her and tries to touch her face so he can read her memories. Violet is so shocked at what he intended to do without her consent. She is also reluctant because she knows that it will reveal that she was able to momentarily stop time. Dane is not worthy of such a gift.
Who the fuck? Now we know she completely forgot of his signet. But in this moment, she's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're attempting to do something without my consent. That's fucked up.
He's trying to read her memories, which is like a super invasive thing. So next he tries to order her, and yes, you heard me right, order her by saying, quote, give me the memory, end quote, to which she replies, quote, touch me without permission and you'll spend the rest of your life regretting it, end quote. Dane, the shit stain, does not even seem to cover how much of a dick he is right now. And this really pissed me off because Dane has known Violet his entire life, and yet he is more willing to believe Amber, who he had a situationship with for a year or so, than his own best friend. He is not a friend to Violet, and certainly not a best friend. I will play a little bit of devil's advocate here because although I think he is completely wrong in the way that he is handling all of this, I will say that maybe he knew the consequences for what she did would be so dire that he just wanted to be sure because he cares about her. But then again, it's like Xaden did not need proof because he trusted Violet's conviction. I think he just trusted her because he seems to know her heart a little bit better. He knows that she is someone that doesn't want to kill anyone or even maybe cause harm. So it would just be totally out of character for her to lie about who it is. Amber's dragon, which is an orange clubtail named Cly, shows up with the other dragons. And of course, Amber's dragon is an orange one because she seems cray and can't be trusted. Tarn shares Violet's memory of that night when she saw Amber before she fled the scene to the other dragons, and they show it to their riders, including Dane, through their mind. Now everyone knows, and Dane finally believes her. Naira says, quote, "And as is our law, your sentence will be carried out by fire," end quote. Amber admits that she wanted to take Violet out because she is the weakest rider. But we know it's most likely because she is jealous of Violet, jealous of how much Dane supposedly says he cares for her, and the fact that two badass dragons chose her. I mean, Dane did kiss Violet in front of everyone, so Amber was probably lurking around and got jealous and jumped at the opportunity to kill her. Violet feels bad for Cly and pleads with the others to have mercy on Amber for Cly's sake. But Tarn makes a good point, saying, quote, "I let someone live once, and he almost killed you last night, Silver One," end quote. Amber is incinerated by Tarn, and Cly mourns.
I get Violet. I know she has never killed anybody, but she fucked herself. This would have never happened if she took out the enemy before the enemy could really take her out. They already attempted on her life. She let it go because she believes the best in people. But obviously, this is a war college, girl. Like, get it together. When she starts feeling bad for the dragon, I'm like, okay, girl, I get it. But like, girl.
You know, I'm not going to lie. I think I would have wanted to save Amber for Cly and just request that she is maybe kicked out of college and sentenced to prison for a few years. But then again, Cly had to have known since they share a mind, so he seemed to have been quite fine with ending Violet's life. But I digress. And that, folks, is the end of chapter 20.
Again, thank you so much for all the listeners. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for following us. Thank you for posting us. And thank you for all the support. Stay tuned for our next episode, which we will cover chapters 21 through 30. We will be posting a new episode every week.
Thank you so much for listening and being here with us to either laugh at us or laugh with us. We're just your local trio of best friends enjoying each other's company and talking about what they love the most, books. This podcast is so much fun to make when you have the best girls doing with you and you get to giggle and laugh until your stomach hurts.
Thank you so much for joining us on our 4th episode. It's been so much fun doing this, especially getting to read the series again with more depth and catching a few things that wasn't noticed the first time. Thanks again, and until next time on the Enchanted Circle Pod.